The troubleshooter to Europe looking for support for action against Libya.
NBC Nightly News, reported by Connie Chung.
Good evening. The White House today disclosed that President Reagan has sent a special envoy, United Nations Ambassador Vernon Walters, to Europe to muster support for a U.S. attack on Libya. Walters' mission appears to be one of the last steps before the president decides to order a retaliatory attack against Libya. NBC's Jamie Gangel has more from the White House.
The White House has sent Walters to make one last attempt to win over its European allies. But administration officials say they already have more than enough evidence against Libya to justify a retaliatory strike. Vice President George Bush, in an interview taped for tomorrow's NBC program Meet the Press, underscored the administration's position.
There's proof that the Libyans have their fingerprints all over state-sponsored terrorism.
And Pentagon sources have said the military alternatives have been worked out. 2 U.S. aircraft carriers are in a holding pattern in the Mediterranean waiting for orders. And the president's advisors believe they have American public opinion behind military action. But the one thing the White House doesn't have is the support of its allies. In Bonn, German Chancellor Helmut Kohl has acknowledged there are a lot of indications of Libyan involvement, but cautioned against U.S. military action. In Italy, Prime Minister Bettino Craxi advised against a military blitz. And in France and Britain, there has also been opposition to a military strike. In response, Walters has met with Margaret Thatcher and is in Bonn tonight to meet with Kohl. By Monday, the diplomatic lobbying tour will be complete, and administration sources indicate that means a strike could come as early as Tuesday. Reports from Britain indicate that Prime Minister Thatcher has apparently softened her position and would now allow the U.S. to fly its F-111 bombers out of England and use this British Air Force base on Cyprus. Administration sources say the president is committed to a retaliatory strike, but might be willing to hold off if European allies agree to strong political and economic sanctions. Short of that, said one official, it's just a matter of time until the president picks a plan and gives the go-ahead. Jamie Gangel, NBC News, the White House.
Defense Department correspondent Fred Francis is at the Pentagon tonight. Fred, what is Ambassador Walters taking to the European leaders?
Connie, he is going to present the evidence. And apparently, from sources here at the Pentagon and the administration, they tell us that the evidence is very good indeed, of such a high quality that it's going to be difficult to present. Consider this. The evidence that the United States has was presented in various circles around Europe as human intelligence, a spy. The American government learned through a spy that nightclub somewhere in the West Berlin area was going to be bombed. That kind of evidence is very difficult to present. It is not a deciphered cable. It's not something you can put before Craxi of Italy or Kohl of Germany. So he will present it saying the case is very strong. Then he will tell the European allies that the only way they can stop a retaliatory strike against Libya is if they will go along with President Reagan's call for sanctions, both economic and political. So it's a very strong case, and they're going to present it in the next 2 days.
Aside from linking the evidence of the West Berlin explosion to Libya, is a U.S. strike against Libya imminent?
I do not think it is imminent, although one source told me today that anyone who tells you he knows what the president is going to do and when he's going to do it either had lunch with Ronald Reagan today or is lying, and he said you should believe the latter. The simple fact is, Connie, we don't know. But with the diplomatic process ongoing, it suggests a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. But believe me, Connie, that is only a guess.
All right, thank you. Fred Francis reporting from the Pentagon. The Allied command in West Berlin is ordering the removal of suspected terrorists to try to prevent future attacks. American, British, and French representatives gave the order after a week of meetings following that bombing of a popular discotheque. A U.S. Army sergeant and a Turkish woman were killed in the explosion that also wounded 230 people. The sergeant was Kenneth Ford, and there were funeral services for him in Detroit today. The soldier's flag-draped casket arrived at Forest Hill Cemetery. There was an honor guard and full military honors with a traditional 21-gun salute. Sergeant Ford's brother, Robert, is also a soldier, a private. There were other burials today of American victims of terrorism, and the scenes we have become familiar with of disbelieving relatives trying to understand what no one can explain. Jack Reynolds reports.
4 victims of another terrorist act were buried today. In Stratford, Connecticut, the funeral of Alberto Ospina. The bomb that was placed on the TWA plane went off under his seat. Ospina was blown out of the aircraft. He is survived by his widow and 2 teenage children. In Annapolis, Maryland, at a Greek Orthodox funeral, there was anger.
Four Marylanders have died in terrorism this year, and I think Maryland's given enough, and I think we need to be tough and have a measured and appropriate response.
Here, 3 generations of the same family were buried. The bomb that killed Alberto Ospina caused their deaths as well. Mrs. Demetra Stillian, her daughter Maria Klug, and her granddaughter Demetra Klug, 9 months old. The baby was placed in her mother's casket. Maria Klug was married in this church, and her daughter was christened here. After an emotional ceremony, Warren Klug had a message for his family's killers.
To those responsible for this cowardly act, you have succeeded in devastating our family, which will never destroy the heart and spirit of America. We anxiously await your judgment day before Americans who are not defenseless, and more importantly, before God. Thank you.
Jack Reynolds, NBC News.
We'll be back with more news in a moment.
It's hard to protect your family's future in a time when financial institutions keep changing. But today, as always, credit unions offer high-interest savings, low-interest loans, and financial security that doesn't change, even when the unexpected happens, because millions of credit union members are insured and protected by the CUNA Mutual Insurance Group. In a changing world, you can count on your credit union and on CUNA Mutual Insurance.
We take care of our own.
Your days go by fast. Your work never seems to end.
That's why Whirlpool refrigerators offer a variety of convenient features. Our most advanced model has its own computer control system you can program for maximum cooling. And our famous no-fingerprint doors. Whirlpool refrigerators.
We're making your world a little easier. Whirlpool makes it easier for you.
Moms have the neatest way to ease you into things. Like when you were a kid and needed a laxative, she wouldn't give you a harsh laxative. No, she'd say, Mom will make it better. Bet she meant this, Mom. Phillips Milk of Magnesia. M-O-M. And even when you're grown up, Mom gives you easy relief, not harsh. Doctors recommend Milk of Magnesia. See, Mom knows what's good for you. You know, no matter how old you are, nobody treats you better than Mom.
About 3,000 strikers and their supporters marched today outside the Hormel meatpacking plant, the scene of a violent confrontation with police yesterday. Police in Austin, Minnesota, fearing more violence today, put off plans to arrest the union's leader on riot charges. Ann Rubenstein reports.
The rally was a show of support for the 1,000-plus striking meatpackers who walked off their jobs at the Hormel meatpacking plant last August.
We intend to keep confronting this company, and we intend to win.
The rally may have been emotional, but things had cooled down significantly since yesterday. Yesterday, violence broke out when police started to arrest demonstrators who had blocked the Hormel plant entrance. 8 officers were injured by rocks or were sprayed with an ammonia compound from squirt guns. 17 people were arrested. 16 are still in jail tonight. Police used tear gas to break up the crowds. They may make more arrests next week after they view videotapes of the incidents. Lots of people came out to see the rally today, including the town's mayor, who is also a member of the union on strike.
As mayor, I'm still trying to be neutral to the part that I want to settle.
Many of the demonstrators today came from other states and other unions, which are closely watching the situation. It's unusual because the strikers' parent union ordered them back to work last month. The order was defied, and the parent union leaders will meet next week to decide if the local leaders should be removed. Ann Rubenstein, NBC News.
Two suspects who died in a bloody Miami shootout with the FBI were wanted in at least 2 other murders and a string of robberies. Investigators were out today examining the scene of the gun battle yesterday, in which 2 FBI agents were killed and 5 wounded by 2 suspected bank robbers who themselves were killed. The suspects had opened fire on the agents who were randomly checking car license plates. Police say the suspects have been tied to radical political groups and may have been robbing banks to raise money for their extremist activities. NASA says it will assign about 90 engineers to redesign the rocket booster on the space shuttle and make it resistant to cold and leaks. NASA confirmed this week it was the failure of a rear solid rocket booster which caused the explosion of the Space Shuttle Challenger. Former Budget Director David Stockman says President Reagan's program for sweeping economic change never had a chance. Stockman claims the president was, in his words, misled by overzealous and incompetent advisors. In a forthcoming book excerpted in the Newsweek magazine, Stockman calls Mr. Reagan a good and decent man who knows very little about basic economics.
Breakfast in a tropical paradise. Great idea.
Call it native brilliance.
Brilliance? But you forget the name of your favorite cereal.
With all this tropical fruit, it's fruit and...
Yeah?
Post Fruit and Fiber Tropical Fruit. Tastes so good you forget the fiber. Now 20% more fiber with sunny pineapple, crunchy banana chips, and coconut. So all you remember is...
It's fruit and tropical fruit.
Lost in paradise.
Post Fruit and Fiber cereal. Tastes so good you forget the fiber.
Look how water can destroy unprotected wood, but not if it's protected with Thompson's Water Seal. Use Thompson's Water Seal waterproofer on dozens of surfaces. Brush on Thompson's for an invisible barrier that helps prevent water from entering and damaging brick, wood, and concrete. Your house isn't really protected until it's protected with Thompson's Water Seal. Many stores now have special values on Thompson's Water Seal.
Looking for a loan? Tried talking to a financial institution? Big, impersonal. Looks like you need a friend. At Beneficial, we're big.
Hi, I'm Fred.
But very personal. You'll talk to the boss when you talk to Beneficial, so there's no committee, no waiting. Everything could be wrapped up in 24 hours.
Congratulations.
Thanks, big guy.
Thank you.
Beneficial. Talk to the manager and you're talking to the boss.
Tomorrow, President Reagan will question Japanese Prime Minister Yasuhiro Nakasone about a plan intended to cut Japan's huge trade surplus. NBC News correspondent Richard Valeriani reports from the State Department.
As surely as the Japanese cherry trees blossom every spring in Washington, so too do new ideas come forth every spring on dealing with the huge trade deficit with Japan. This spring, Japanese Prime Minister Nakasone has brought a complicated plan for restructuring the Japanese economy in a way that will promote domestic consumption rather than exports. A discussion of that plan is at the top of the agenda for his meetings with President Reagan. The trade deficit hit a record of nearly $50 billion last year, up from $36 billion in 1984 and $20 billion in '83. The higher the figure, the higher the number of jobs lost in American industries. Many economists believe the United States itself is to blame for much of the trade imbalance with Japan.
In the President's economic report about 2 years ago, the statement was made, the U.S. trade problem was not caused in Tokyo or Paris, it was caused in Washington. And that's because of our huge budget deficit, our own high interest rates, and therefore the fact that we priced ourselves out of world markets by pushing the exchange rate of the dollar so high as to make American goods uncompetitive.
That's not the prevailing view in Congress.
It's a one-way street. Japan has an open market into the United States, and they're selling hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods here. But they block the Japanese market to our products. They will not let American goods come in. Japanese have been very skillful in talking about changing the trade problem, but doing very little about it.
Regal and a majority of his colleagues have urged the president in writing to get tough with Nakasone on trade, and they've warned that if he doesn't, they will. Richard Valeriani, NBC News, at the State Department.
Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega revealed today what he believes will get the peace process rolling in Central America. This follows a meeting in Panama earlier this week among the 5 Contadora nations and 8 other Central American countries. The session ended in failure. with Nicaragua blamed as an obstacle to peace. NBC News correspondent Robin Lloyd reports from Managua on Ortega's proposals.
The announcement came early this morning. Nicaragua would agree to sign the latest draft of the regional peace treaty discussed last week in Panama, but only if the United States would agree to stop its support of the Contras. Almost immediately, Nicaraguan leader Daniel Ortega started driving that point home, campaign style. All week long, he's been telling people here that the United States is the only obstacle to peace. But even as Ortega tried to appear conciliatory, Nicaraguan troops were pressing ahead in a full-scale offensive against the Contras. This battalion moving north toward the Contra camps inside Honduras. Nicaraguan military leaders are hoping to deal a crippling blow to the rebels now before any more U.S. aid can reach them. Diplomatic sources here say the Nicaraguan government is convinced that Congress will approve the president's Contra aid request for $100 million. And so Nicaraguan President Daniel Ortega is talking tough. We don't need to make any more gestures, said Ortega. It's up to the United States to make gestures now. But Nicaragua's response today was seen by many here as nothing more than just that, a gesture. Opposition leaders not taking it seriously.
They are looking for a military solution. They feel that they can destroy the Contra movement.
But as they did in Panama during the recent peace talks, Nicaraguan leaders are still insisting they won't sign any peace agreement unless the United States stops all aid to the rebels. How can we sign a disarmament agreement, asked the Nicaraguans, if the United States is arming the rebels? But already key leaders in the region, like Salvadoran President Napoleon Duarte, are knocking down this latest response by the Nicaraguan government. Duarte told NBC News today that the Nicaraguan proposal was unacceptable and nothing new, making it clear that the Central American conflict remains firmly deadlocked. Robin Lloyd, NBC News, Managua, Nicaragua.
French schoolteacher Michel Briand is home safe after his dramatic rescue from kidnappers in Lebanon. After his arrival at the airport in Paris, Briand described how 3 rabbit hunters stumbled upon him and his abductors yesterday near a village close to the Syrian border. The kidnappers started shooting and the hunters returned the fire. The gunman who had abducted Briand on Tuesday ran away, leaving him blindfolded and bound, but unharmed. Kurt Waldheim told a German magazine today he was a decent soldier during World War II and that accusations against him are a pack of lies. The former Secretary General of the UN said he was forced into the German army and that he did nothing wrong. AIDS is spreading faster in France than in any other European country. Now, a specialist at the Pasteur Institute estimates there are 200,000 healthy carriers of the deadly virus in France. About 1 out of every 10 carriers eventually develops AIDS. The incurable disease has killed more than 10,000 people throughout the world since it was discovered back in 1981.
No other long-distance company can give you all AT&T can, but what if our people weren't there? Network engineers who make sure calls go right through. Long-distance operators who give credit for wrong numbers. Customer representatives who help you make your dollar go farther. All the people who make our worldwide network work for you. AT&T Long Distance. For over 100 years, when you reached out, we were there. And you can keep it that way. AT&T, the right choice.
We asked laxative users, why did you switch?
I switched from regular Metamucil to Fiberall because Fiberall is sugar-free.
Well, I switched because Fiberall has more than laxative fiber.
That's right, more fiber.
It's a fact. Fiberall has more wholesome fiber and is sugar-free. Both start with the same laxative fiber for regularity, but Metamucil adds 50% sugar. Fiberall adds another wholesome fiber.
No wonder we've all switched to Fiberall.
Fiberall, sugar-free and more fiber.
All across this land, Americans are celebrating our greatest lady's 100th birthday. By an act of Congress, America commemorates this event by minting United States Liberty coins. These valuable keepsakes will be a lasting way for you to treasure liberty. United States Liberty coins, singly or in sets, at banks, savings and loans, and Kmart stores. Now you can keep liberty in mint condition forever.
Mexico is lowering its oil prices to try to recapture sales lost to Saudi Arabia in the United States. Mexico needs the money to pay its staggering foreign debt. In a Washington Post interview, Mexican Finance Minister Jesus Silva Herzog said Mexico must continue to tighten its belt because of the declining price of oil. The plummeting price of crude means hard times in Texas, too. NBC News correspondent Robert Elliott reports from Houston.
The only thing that's booming in Houston these days is the truck rental business. Thousands of unemployed oil workers are packing up and leaving, many returning to the very towns they left.
As one man put it to me the other day, they can go home and be broke and be with friends and relatives that can help them out instead of staying here and being broke by themselves.
During the late 70s and early 80s, Houston became a boom town of unparalleled proportions. 1.5 million people swarmed to the new energy capital. Those same people are finding the opportunities are no longer here. They either leave or spend their time at the unemployment office. Since oil prices began to slip 4 years ago, an estimated 150,000 people have left the area. And with this year's drastic drop in the price of crude, Houston could lose an additional 60,000 jobs. Rick Spiller, an oil company geologist, is just one of the casualties. He lost his job 3 months ago. Now he's moving back to Kentucky.
I went to a couple places around here, and they just said basically they were laying off too. So there's nothing really you could do about it. And, for that matter, I have a degree in geology, and I doubt very seriously I'm going to be able to use it now. I'm probably going to have to go and change my career and do something else.
Placement agencies used to import thousands of oil workers a week, but now
we're going just the opposite. We're sending them out all over the country, sending them back to the Midwest, back to the East Coast, back to the West Coast.
Would you call it a brain drain?
I think that's a good statement, right? We're losing talent, definitely.
Houston recently held a giant laser and fireworks show to celebrate its history, but its future is what people are worried about. City officials hope to attract new business and to diversify the economy, but against a backdrop of layoffs, bankruptcies, and foreclosures, that could be a very difficult job. Robert Elliott, NBC News, Houston.
The big boys eat. We're going your way, saving with style. We're going your way, mile after mile. We're going your way, we're Budget.
At Budget, you get stylish cars without the stylish prices. Just $39.95 for a luxurious Lincoln. There's no better way to go.
We're going your way, we're Budget, and we're going your way.
Sunday, an exclusive interview with Vice President George Bush returning from a tense Middle East. What's the latest on the explosive Libyan situation, the oil crisis? George Bush on Meet the Press.
This is Marv Albert with a reminder tomorrow here on NBC starting at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, the final of the Family Circle Cup Tennis. Defending champion Chris Everett Lloyd going against Steffi Graf, followed by Sports World with part 2 of the Superstars featuring Mark Gastineau of the Jets, Willie Gault of the Bears. That's tomorrow here on NBC Sports.
Why is my antacid Tums? Tums is effective. It neutralizes 1/3 more stomach acid than the other leading brand. And Tums is rich in calcium. To me, that's extra good news.
You'll be sorry in the morning.
I'm sorry now. I can't sleep.
Take Salmon X2 with a non-prescription sleep ingredient most preferred by doctors. Helps you fall asleep 38% faster than without it.
Salmon X2. Sleep on it.
Baseball is back, and the crowds are packing the stadiums of the New York Yankees, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and, of course, the San Jose Bees. That's right, the Bees, a team which has distinguished itself by welcoming players who once used drugs. Jack Perkins reports on how baseball is cleaning up its act.
Outlaws. They joke about it, but these are baseball's outlaws. 4 talented players who got booted out of the major leagues because of drugs. Steve Howe was a brilliant relief pitcher for the Dodgers. It's a long way from World Series, Dodger Stadium, to last night's season opener, San Jose Bees, the poorest team at the lowest level of professional baseball, and the only team today that would have Steve Howe. Or Darryl Sconyers, or Ken Reitz, or Mike Norris. All were at the top, but they're at the bottom now.
You always tend to think, well, it's not going to happen to me, and it can't happen to me. And obviously it did. And
Norris, because of cocaine, was out of baseball for 2 years, until the owner of the San Jose Bees called him, and called the others.
What I told all of them was, hey, what happened in the past was just that, in the past.
Salaries like Howe's $325,000 a year are in the past. On the Bees, it's about $1,000 a month. Players wash their own uniforms and are lucky to get a pair of shoes to play in.
That's true. I mean, just getting shoes now, you have trouble getting a pair of shoes, whereas before you can get 10 pairs in a day.
It isn't the big leagues, but
baseball is baseball no matter where it's played.
The fact that they were willing to, put their ego aside and come back to A-ball and take those 10-hour bus rides and make less money shows me that, hey, they really love the game. They want to get back on top.
Meanwhile, San Jose has never known anything like it. The Bees have never had lines, never a sellout, never a single reporter. Last night, dozens.
Rookie of the year, 1980, Major League All-Star 1982, Steve Howe!
I think that's what the game's all about. I think that's what life's all about, is people going to bat for each other instead of stepping on each other.
Steve Howe pitched brilliantly last night. The Bees won 5-1. And Steve had a message for his friends up in the majors.
I'll be back.
So say the Outlaws. Jack Perkins, NBC News.
And that's our news. Vice President George Bush will be interviewed on Meet the Press tomorrow. And Chris Wallace will be here tomorrow night. I'm Connie Chung in New York. I'll see you again next Saturday night. Thank you for joining us, and for all of us at NBC News, good night.
Griffith's back.
Shazam!
Opie's back, and Barney too.
10-4.
With Gomer and Goober and Thelma Lou.
Old friend.
They're all back for all new laughs in America's hometown.
What do you think? Outstanding.
And they'll shoot the works when you return to Mayberry.
Life in the fast lane.
A world premiere movie tomorrow.
Coming up next on the scene, it's